All right, everybody. Thank you for checking out another episode of the Real Abhinav podcast. Today I have SullyBop, a rapper and a podcaster, homie I met on LinkedIn. And today we're going to get into some of the nuances of becoming a rapper and being a podcaster in that space. I think you and I share our love for music. I'm a drummer myself, so we can get into that. And of course, health and fitness is kind of my background, being in the bodybuilding world, and then talking about mindset. So we'll get into all that good stuff today. Without further ado, SullyBop, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great, man. Thank you, Abhinav, for having me. I really appreciate it. I just literally, it's so funny that we connected, like 3 days ago or something?
Not
like,
even a week.
Not even a week ago. And now we're hitting it off on the podcast. And we were getting, like you said, we were almost like going to have to save it for this because, the conversation before was so crazy. But I'm great, man. I'm just living, man, doing my thing.
So I have a great question for you, which I think a lot of people that are afraid to start their own podcast or maybe put themselves out there go through. Tell me about the time when you first heard your voice on the mic and how that felt.
Dude, yeah. Honestly, yeah. So for me, it was with music before the podcast. And since like being a rapper and like I play guitar, a lot of my life, but it's not the same thing when you have like this instrument to channel it through. And then when you got to use your own voice, it's a whole different experience. But I remember everything. Actually, no, it comes back to the gaming. Like we were talking about, my buddy, he's the one that got me on YouTube videos, and his name's Josh. And I said, yo, hey, I want to record some music. Can you just lend me your mic? Are you still using it? He had like taken a break from YouTube. And so he was like, yeah, like you can use my mic. So I'm using his mic. I plug it in. I'm listening to myself. I'm like, dude, I can't. I had no idea what I sounded like. And I did a little bit kind of from DJing, but I never was trained. And I never was trained to like about inflection. And I think I kind of grew into my voice too. But like the first time I listened to it in the first kind of tracks I recorded on that mic, I couldn't like go and play it in the car. Like I couldn't do it.
I can't hear the sound of my own voice.
I can't do it. Yeah. And it really, there isn't a switch there isn't a moment where you go, all right, I'm cool with my voice. Like you just learn to be okay with it because you realize you can't change it.
That's so true. And I mean, that's kind of the point I wanted to make is from somebody like you who's been experienced now for a few years doing this, and if you're afraid to start your own podcast or your own adventure out there, everybody hates the sound of their own voice at first, but you get used to it. Maybe you can find a way to use it as a meditation to be like, yeah, I really have to pay attention to what I say so I don't sound like a fool at the end of it all. You can be very slow and methodical about it. And then I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere, right? That's really what it comes down to.
True, and that's the hardest thing to do, I think, a lot of times or what people think is the hardest thing. I think the easiest thing to do is start. I literally wrote a LinkedIn post about this today. But you're supposed to be a beginner, right? You're supposed to not, right? When you do curls for the first time and you've never done even like any other exercise other than like running or walking, right? Like you're supposed to not even know what the form is, and yet like that's the whole point of it. So yeah, starting is essential. You got to just record that first podcast and just be cool with yourself listening back to it. Like just do it, even though you're like, I cannot listen to this. How are other people going to listen to this? They don't see your voice how you see or hear your voice.
True,
right?
True. Yeah, and that's a really good point, because a lot of times what happens is we are our own worst critic. A lot of times we beat ourselves up in our own head. We see other people's polished lives on social media, so we think we have to be perfect. But your first, maybe show out of the door, your first content is not going to be perfect, and that's okay. Wow. At least if you tried, now you have somewhere to start, and you have something to improve upon. It's the same thing as like going to the gym. I always make this analogy. It's like you're eating one healthy meal isn't going to make you get in shape, but eating one bad meal isn't going to make you unhealthy either. Yes. You got to consistently do it over time to see if anything actually comes out of it. And I'm sure you could say that was probably true for you in rapping and of course podcasting. I'm curious if you have ever made this correlation. Since I'm a drummer, a lot of times when I used to drum, and when I drum between songs, or if I'm listening to music or a track, I tend to drum like around the beat, like kind of if I know the tempo, I'm trending to like kind of jance around the beat to make sure I can fill in those gaps with like a little lick or a little bit of a groove or whatever. And to me, when I listen to rap music, I've culturally, when I moved to United States in 2002, huge influence on me was like Dave Chappelle and like Jay-Z and Kanye. And so like I really love that whole culture of like rap music and comedy and just, like black culture in general. Speaking of which, Black Lives Matter, we're talking about it. It's all in the news. This is like black excellence, rap
That's how
music.
I just made a remix about it just because I'm like, I got to speak on this because this is I'm a
Yeah.
rapper. Like I have, this not really my culture, you know?
Right, right.
I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, but yeah.
Yeah, but you're like the minority considering all,
Oh,
the
truth.
grand
Hmm.
scheme of rappers, being a non African American in the rap game is like it's very rare. Like you got what Eminem, Lil Dicky, maybe Machine Gun Kelly, a couple of other names come to
Yep.
mind, but not very many for me personally, that are notable. So I'm curious, like, do you consider when you're rapping similar to like drumming, where you're kind of drumming with your mouth and filling in the beats? Has that been something that you've kind of thought about?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I was a drummer too. I don't know if I told you, but
Oh,
I
really?
played, yeah, I played,
Every
or
drummer
Mhm.
realizes another drummer somehow. I feel like you always find them, and then you're like, oh shit. Later on, you find out, oh,
Yeah.
we're both drummers.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then it just connections even
That's
stronger.
awesome, man.
But yeah, man, I played kind of more orchestral kind of band type, drumming with a lot of, snares and like the big toms and the
Yeah,
marching
yeah,
band thing. And then I did jazz drums for a few years, which really kind of put me onto that swing and that kind of brings you back to the roots of it. But yeah, but back to your question, the snare hit is basically everything for rap.
hmm,
So if you listen, if the snares, if you have a beat, the same beat, and you have the snare hit in two different locations, you're gonna rap differently over,
gotcha.
the beat with it on the two or the beat with it on the half. So, but I think unconsciously I got a lot of the rhythm from drumming. So then rapping came a little bit easier so when my friends were freestyling, I probably picked it up a little bit easier than your average Joe who doesn't really have that kind of rhythm already.
Right.
So it definitely helped me, but I'm not sure how conscious it was. I think it was a lot of more just unconscious rhythm. But as far as like the flows go, I mean, the drums are everything to me on a beat,
Right.
when it comes to what I'm going to do flow wise. And that's where I pick up the flow too, just from kind of hearing the drums and what's going on in the drum sound. But I'm kind of biased because of that too, a little bit. Obviously, a lot of other artists kind of have different or instrumental influences. So, but
Yeah.
for me, you're so right. The drums are just pivotal when it comes to the flow and kind of how you're going about the beat when it comes to rapping.
So talk to me a little bit about your process when you're getting ready to write a song or you want to record. Like when I listen to a track, if I want to drum on it, I tend to understand what's the bass beat, like what's the bass line, what's the, tempo. And then I really just go in and I'm basically like seeing where can I squeeze myself in without making the whole thing, disrupt the pattern. But when it comes to words, it's a little tricky because you can make the sounds like like jada boop bop bop. You could just do all that to fit them in, but
Mm-hmm.
now you're articulating the words and breaking them down into like different syllables and whatnot. Like, so do you have a process that you've kind of finessed with up to this point that you could describe?
Yeah, in the beginning, I didn't. In the beginning, I was trying to fit so many words in because I didn't realize I could be kind of flexible and change the flow. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I was like, people would tell me they would be like, "Oh, I really like your song, but it went too fast. I can't listen to you. Like I can't hear. I don't know what you're saying."
Mm,
Um, so yeah, there's a there. But as far as process goes, I think with the lyrics is a little bit more process, but the actual kind of the flow just comes. Now I don't really write as much, just write down the lyrics and then go to the beat.
mm,
Sometimes I'll just have the beat and it's coming to my head basically just what you just said of like I got this thing in my head where I know it's gonna be like and I'm like, all
right,
right, let me
right.
put this word in here like this, and because I know how the flow goes, but let me fit some words. So there's a lot of placeholders, and that's kind of what I would do when I started was kind of I would have, they were technically placeholders, but I didn't realize they were placeholders. I never went back and changed them. But now I realize, okay, you got to go back and change those placeholders and put better lyrics there and switch that flow. And now I can look at a song more macro, whereas before I was looking at it kind of, I can do macro and the micro. So I can look at it as 4 or 5 different sections of the song and being able to rearrange those.
Mm,
Or I can go in to one syllable and change that one syllable. Right. So, but as you don't have that self-awareness when you're starting, you just want to put your words on the beat. Okay, my words are on the beat. I made a song. Okay.
right, right, right.
Now it's kind of just like, oh man, on the half note on the eighth bar, that one little inflection right there, you should have went higher. You went lower. Like, okay, I'll
Mm.
go and switch that now. I don't know. That's a really roundabout way of kind of talking about the process. So I guess that proves that it's not as much of a process that I could describe. I think it kind of just comes, but that's more of like the tweaking, I guess, what I was
I've heard Jay-Z
picking
say
up.
this, that he said, like, if you want to make good music, you get a you get a talented artist, you get a recording studio, and then you leave the door cracked open, so that God can come in and do the work,
It's the
because
muse.
ultimately, like, it's like you're prepped up, right? It's like it's not really in your hands, especially in the moment when you're spitting the words. It's all happening at the edge of time, right? The beat's moving, your words are coming out, things are being laid down. But all of that real moment, when it's happening in that moment, you're not thinking about it. You're just doing it, right? It's no different than, like, if you're under the squat rack or you're doing the weights in the gym.
Yep.
You think about it all day long, but once you're in the gym and you got that weight under you, it's no more thinking time. It's doing
Nope.
time. You know what I'm saying? Now let's go. Let's push this. Let's push this out. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can't believe I just put that out there. It's almost like something came over me and took that. I'm curious, have you felt that way a lot of the times when you're creating rap and things like that?
If I don't feel that way, it's very difficult. It gets very difficult to create. And great analogy that you made. And it's kind of like when you're working out with a partner, and then for like 15 to 20 minutes, you guys don't say a word, but you
Right.
don't realize that you're not talking to each other. You just both are in your own zone. Yeah, tunnel, right? Tunnel
Right.
vision. So that's the same thing for the music. That's exactly what Jay-Z obviously eloquently described that as he does. And he's a one take guy. I don't know,
Yeah.
one take Hove. You probably heard that before. He does a lot. I don't know what he's rehearsed or what, but he does a lot of one take.
Yeah.
He just goes off the vibe, man, and that's, I mean, that's another level of kind of of the game, right? But yeah, what was the I
Who
completely.
inspires you? I mean, that's no, that's good. That's perfect. Who inspires you, like, as an artist? Like,
Mm.
what are some of the kind of foundational rappers that you looked up to? I'm sure I can name a few, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna say some names that you and I will find common. So I'm curious, like, what are your maybe most influential folks that you, like, always go back to get your inspiration, and that your groove and your rhythm and your patterns and sort of things like that.
Yeah, I actually started listening to rap right when I started rapping. So I didn't know, literally when I was 15, 16, I hadn't listened. I knew who Eminem was. That was it. If you told me name an Eminem song, nope, couldn't name it. Name a Jay-Z song, nope.
Right.
Nas, no, I didn't know him. And I listened to classic rock. I got like a Jefferson Airplane, the Who like poster behind me. I got like Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, all that. Like my dad put me on classic rock, so I came up on that. Then you start getting into like Green Day, and then a little bit more hard
I love
rock. And
Green
then,
Day, man.
dude, I love Green Day too. Like one of my
If
favorite.
you grew up in the 2000s and you watched the MTV
Yes.
Awards and you didn't see
Yup.
Green Day win year after year after year after year, man,
Oh
that's
my
funny. I'm
God. What
sorry for that tangent, but
no, dude. That's the power of Green Day right there.
yeah, dude, Trey
But
Cool.
straight up, dude. Oh my God. Yeah, I listened to all these different, or this more classic, rock influences, and then I started freestyling with one of my buddies. His name's Justin, and we started just freestyling. I don't know, he was always into hip hop and rap and
Yeah,
Dominican dude. He was always, more of a cultured person than I was, and I was just kind of in my own world. But one of the first rappers I listened to was Joey Badass,
I know
Action
him.
Bronson. There's a couple other ones, but now in the last like probably 2 or 3 years, my influences have changed a lot. But I definitely did. I made like an executive decision of like, let me go through all of Eminem's albums, let me go through all of Nas's albums, let me go through all Jay-Z's albums, and I kind of and I did a little self-education on the history of hip hop and rap and tried to understand and okay, and I was becoming a producer at the same time. So all right, what is sampling? What's the history of sampling? How does jazz and blues, how did that become rock, and then rock become whatever it is right now, and how is hip hop on a pedestal? So I kind of went through this whole kind of history of music, and obviously I haven't touched 10% of it, but and then I got into more, and then I found my own rappers to really enjoy. I was trying to like kind of go everywhere and listen to all these different people and try to understand hip hop kind of as a culture. But then recently, this guy Freddie Gibbs, I don't know if you ever listen to him. Very talented dude. Flows are crazy. He's from Gary, Indiana, and he like has some just very crazy stories, and just he's kind of reminds me of Tupac a little bit, just a little bit more raw and a deeper voice, but he kind of has that vibe. And then another kid, Jack Harlow, he's 22.
I actually
And
know him. He just had that song "What's Poppin'" that
what's
just
poppin'?
popped
So
off.
straight up, I mean, that's it. So I've been listening to him for like 2 or 3 years. And
Wow.
I remember listening to his tape, and I'm putting on my story for the like on my Instagram story all the time for the last like 2 years. Like, watch this kid blow up, watch him blow up. I go to a show in November. I walk in at 8 o'clock. Literally in 4 minutes, he goes up. I walk right to the front. Right, this will never happen again. Good thing I went. That was before What's Poppin'. It wasn't even sold out. Like, it might have been sold out, but I walked in and there wasn't even nobody stopping me. I walked right up to the front.
Oh.
Now, and that was at what was it? It was at the Fillmore, but it was at the other the other venue that's inside of the Fillmore. And like now he's a Fillmore artist.
Dude, that story just gives me chills because you get to see that. And I know you believe in yourself. I can tell from your music, I can tell from your composure, and you know that day is gonna happen for you where you're gonna have a fucking show just sold the fuck
2 to
out.
5 years, bro. 2 to 5
Dude.
years. That's
But see,
that's
that's
where
what I
I'm
love
at.
about you. You're realistic with yourself. You're hustling. You're not, a lot of people talk a big game, but they don't know how to work hard.
I used to have 6-month goals, and I used to have 3-month goals. I remember I wrote down really crazy. I just moved out of an apartment I was in at school for 2 years, and I found this piece of paper, and I looked. It's one of those like, one of those like kind of storybook type of things that happens, like movie kind of scene where you take out the piece of paper and it said, "This year we're gonna perform live at least once," and then that was last year. So 2019 I performed live like maybe 3 times, and then over the last 8 months maybe like 6, 7, 8 times. Just music, not counting like the DJing.
Yeah.
So then I realized, oh, I got it. Like I did that. So if I did that, then I mean the next thing is just, it's gonna, as long as I just plan it out correctly and have those kind of, like I said, it used to be those monthly goals. Now it's more of a 2, 5, and a 10. And
I love it.
15,
Would you say your band background helped you with the performance on stage and kind of not have that crazy anxiety about being in front of people?
It did. Definitely DJing helped me too,
Yeah.
because
Oh, there you go.
I knew how my voice sounded on because on this mic your voice is not the same as when you have
Right.
when you have this mic like this, and you're doing this and you're trying to cover it so you can. That's not the same, so to learn to have that kind of little bit more self-awareness. But I was still nervous, man, because I hadn't performed. When you don't perform those songs, you don't know what the vibe's different. Like, you get nervous. And then luckily I started performing guitar on stage too, and that kind of gave me a little bit more self-awareness too. But the DJing helped, but you got to just it's just reps. That's all it is.
I got you, man. Do you have like a process that you use to kind of bring yourself into the zone? I know you haven't performed a ton of times, but you've done it 3 times now. But like, even for your sessions when you're sitting to record, like, do you have like a method to your madness in a sense?
Yeah, before I perform, and now that I think about it, I think I've done, because I actually do them with this group. It's called Mad Minds. And they put on these shows in North Jersey, and a bunch of artists get together, crazy collective. I think we've done maybe 7 or 8 times or different shows that I've performed at. And then maybe 3 times rap, and maybe like 2 or 3 times guitar, and some drumming in there too. But as far as pre-show or before I go in the studio, I usually meditate for like 5 minutes, just a little, kind of get centered, because I get a little nervous beforehand. So I try to do whatever I can. Obviously it's very impulsive to drink, and you want to have like a beer or something to take the edge off, which I don't mind doing that. Like, if I'm at a DJ gig, totally, if it's a wedding, whatever.
Yeah.
But I try not to. I try to like really get in myself, because that's the hardest. Like, it's hard to do it for sure. But I record now. I'm gonna record on my rap right here on this mic, so I don't have as much of a process. I can literally be in my day and have like a little hour.
Just walk out of the bathroom. I think I got some bars to spit. Let me just hit
That's
record.
it, man. The shower thoughts, man. I'll be writing these hooks in the shower. I mean, come on.
Oh, man. I feel you, man.
That's so.
Yeah.
But yeah, before I go in the studio, I'll definitely kind of get centered. Or if I'll be with like, I don't really go in the studio with my boys anymore. I used to do that. They're still my homies, but I still don't really go in.
I'd rather have more focused time.
Yeah, I'd rather go in alone. And it's like, why are they like, they're here to support me for sure, but I don't know. I want that input. I kind of want just me and the engineer, and and that's kind of where it's at. But I do like to do a little meditation if I'm feeling a little anxious.
I'm curious if you also look at kind of your life. You definitely sound like you're on track. You're working hard, but I'm sure you have tough days, right? But do you look at kind of how you deal with those tough days? Is there sort of a process to get Sully back into the game, into the mood? Like, what do you do for those hard days?
Yeah, there's not a lot of times that I have like I guess like a bad day. And I think a lot of times what I say is I like to stop it before it even starts. So that's my
Hmm.
morning routine. That's where my morning routine comes in. Because if I can get centered in the beginning of the day, whatever happens, like the client calls you and he's like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to do this anymore. I don't have this so we need something with this contract lot." Like, and it's all these things. Like, if I can get centered in the beginning of the day, usually I can, kind of handle it. Obviously, like working out and fitness helps when it's something during the day. I can work out at the end of the day and kind of bring myself back. But the morning routine, I try to let that center me and bring me kind of through the day. So whatever happens, I can kind of roll with.
Gotcha. I'm curious, what's the most like memorable thing that you've learned in your journey so far? Like if you were to tell someone that's starting out, or a younger
Mm.
person that wants to do something similar to what you're doing, what's something that's most memorable to you that maybe you keep having to, make sure this is one of your bullet points, your anchors in your process? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, the hardest thing for me is even though in some aspects I do it really well, in some aspects I don't, but definitely consistency, which is what everybody's going to tell you in everything, like, and just showing up, and just being yourself too, I think is huge because, if you could just standing by your word, that's really it. So stand by your word, stand by your word consistently. And then,
Yeah.
I'd be good, but definitely learning different learning every day, and just watching this podcast or that podcast, or reading a book that you don't think you're gonna like I just, or a random
Being a
book.
student of the game is
Being
basically
a
what I'm
student of the
getting at.
game, I got like an Ernest Hemingway, but I don't even know who he is. I just know his name,
Yeah, the popular
right?
guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, very, and he wasn't even his writer. Being a writer was a side thing. Imagine that. So,
Yeah.
which I didn't even know about him, right? So definitely learning and learning consistency, and just standing by your word and just doing what you say you're going to do. And obviously it's just hard to do. I've definitely messed up on it before. Probably from my podcast, like the most out of anything, but
What do you do for staying authentic? Like, because I feel personally, I've made this analogy before that when we're on like social media or we're just on our devices, phone, tablet, computer, whatever you want to call it, right? If you're on a screen, you're watching other people online. I find that over time, it's super easy to see what everybody else is like and forget what you are really like. And it's very easy to get affected by that and to then stay authentic. And then when those people, including myself in the past, when I've then wanted to come out and create, I almost feel like, wow, I kind of forgot what I was like. I kind of forgot who
mm,
I really am. So I'm curious, like, what for you keeps you authentic when you're creating content day in and day out? I know you're very active on many different platforms outside of just you're rapping in the studio. There's a lot more work that you do. What do you do to kind of stay authentic, or like, is there anything that comes to mind for that?
yeah, just detached. Definitely. I don't scroll. Like, I don't look at posts on Instagram. I don't look at stories. So I don't get addicted to the stories. They just kind of
Mm,
annoy me after a while. So I don't feel the need to scroll. I do like stories for like 5 minutes, and just, hey, if I don't see your post, I don't see your post.
mm,
Unfortunately, I encourage people to just send them to me, because I'm like, I probably won't see it. If I do scroll, it's usually on the weekends, maybe for like 5 or 10 minutes. But that's definitely how I I try to not be influenced by everybody. I love everybody I follow, and I definitely have it's a lot of positivity that I follow, for sure. But being detached, and then I take like at least 2 weeks. I try to do 3 or 4 weeks a year off of it completely,
yeah.
a week at a time for sure. You can't do like a day. You got to do like, at least for me, I got to do like a week at a time. So those are my kind of two things to stay authentic and in my own lane, so I don't try to get like pulled from this side and pulled from that side, or
Right.
and I try to stick to what I say too, because sometimes I'll say, I'll say something, and then I'll have a dialogue with somebody, because they'll reply and they won't, agree with what I said. And I always just make sure to keep that up and not delete it, because it's so
Right.
easy to have a couple people be like, this is wrong. And then you just take it down, so.
Right, because then you're like all of a sudden thinking about what they believe to be right versus what you felt when it was your true truth, really what came out from you. That's very,
Exactly.
very interesting, man. I like that. That's good. So take a break and then,
There's no like guidelines for the balance. That's the problem. Like, you
right.
gotta
We were
have to
just kind of,
find it
it's just
yourself.
like the scooter thing. I don't know if you have those scooters in in your neighborhood back in the day, like if just a year ago when the bird scooters and all them started popping up?
Big
It's
time.
basically like what happened was, right, there was a huge disruption. Cities just got flooded with like hundreds of thousands of scooters overnight, and they have nothing to do. I would say the same thing started to happen with social media. You know, it was Facebook and YouTube, and then, you know, like Twitter and Instagram, and, you know, we got TikTok now, and we got all these other things that were in the middle of that. And it's just like people just all of a sudden got way more content that they can plug into, but nobody gave us like sort of the best practices. Like, here's how
Yes,
you,
there is none. Yeah.
right. Like nobody talked about it. So it's almost like we're setting this foundation up. Like, I don't know, I don't have any kids yet, but I'm sure when I do, I'd have to want to, you know, figure out for them, like, hey, I don't want my kids to never use technology because I think that's an integral part of life. But then what do you do to kind of navigate that landscape? So it's constantly for me, I'm thinking about that, you know?
Is there anything that you do particularly like to kind of stay in that lane? Because you create content too. You create this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I actually ended up taking about a year off of like pretty much all social media except for just watching YouTube videos, because that's kind of like how I learn a lot of.
Dude, I feel like I'm like in school when I'm listening to like stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my education, second education.
For sure. So like I almost took a year off because I got caught up in the. I have a very addictive personality.
Me too.
So, and if I do something, you know, I'm working really hard at it. And so when I started my studio, I didn't really know exactly what I was stepping into, but I knew that I wanted to push myself into an uncomfortable place. Right before we got on the podcast, I was telling you a little bit about how I started this. I didn't know what I was doing and I had to figure it all out. But during that process, I started to get real caught up with all the pieces that are involved with content creation, pre-production, post-production, you know, delivery, and then engagement, all these different things that are involved. Now you multiply that across, you know, 4 or 5 different platforms, you're talking about a full-time job, right? So there's just no way I was not going to get burned out. You know, just the way I was going at it, I was kind of like, I can do it. I've been a bodybuilder. There's like nothing I can't do, you know, type of mindset. But then you take that and you realize like, okay, you've run as fast as you can, you've sprinted, and you've run out of gas. So now you need to slow down and be more methodical about it, which is kind of, you know, was my approach. So I really do believe in you know, detoxing from it. So I try not to use social media for more than a certain amount of time in the day. It's interesting for me because I have an international following and I have a lot of family and friends that are overseas who, if I'm not on social media, they're like, dude, is this guy alive? Like, what's going on? You know? So I do like kind of that connectivity, but at the same time, I'm limiting myself to like not more than, let's say in the entire day, no more than like an hour of all of the different platforms. And then of course, YouTube kind of fits in a weird category, but you got to be careful with the YouTube binging too. As you know, with those algorithms, they'll just keep going. So I've given myself a certain amount of time in the day because I do find that it's important for me to be on these platforms and share my piece and then connect with certain people. But yeah, I just give myself time. And then like you, I meditate every day as well. And then for me, it's like when I'm meditating, I'd really get to see how distracted I am, because you'll see how your thoughts are all the time, right? And then when you sit down and actually reflect, you start to see, wow, I'm like super distracted. I need to change something in my life.
When you do that meditation and the timer goes off and then you didn't meditate the whole time,
you're just like chattering in your mind,
what
right?
What was I doing?
Yeah. And that's like almost a good barometer for me to realize, okay, I need to spend either less time or I need to do more time on something else. You know, maybe it's reading a book or whatever. My wife and I, we've been implementing keeping our phones out of the bedroom at night very recently. We started doing that.
That's great.
You know, so the first thing when we wake up, we're not like this, you know, because I'm
like it's too easy. Like I love my girl, but she's definitely like, we're both on it. And you know, it's like, what?
And you know, it's interesting. We're talking about this because like, I have to admit, like a large part of my income comes from the internet. Like 99% of my income comes from being online, talking to customers, serving my clients, you know, emails or service or whatever. So it's like, you look at it and you go, well, this does help me. I make money. But then if it starts to affect your mental health or it starts to affect your other, you know, important things in life, because life is not about just staring at a screen all day, right? Yep. But sadly, it is becoming a large part of most of our lives because of how we get our income out of it. But then it's like, going back to the earlier point about the balance thing, it's like, if we're not taught the balance, then we're just going to get caught up in
setting
this.
Like what you said, setting those boundaries too. And it's like, and you know how it is with the business, and like people want to call you on the weekends. It's like, I didn't realize I have to tell people now, you don't call me Saturday and Sunday. Don't call me. I'm not going to answer, you know? And it's just cause that's the time. Like people were like surprised that I even had like a girlfriend, that I had time to do that. So like, it's like, cause all my time is filled up. Like what I tell anybody, you know, when I just meet them, or what I even had to tell her was like, hey, like there's this one thing that I always prioritize, and it's just my time. So
Right.
that's just how it is. So when somebody calls me on the weekends, it's like, I'm not picking. I know it's important. Like text me, I'll at least be able to see it. But it's just setting those boundaries, those daily boundaries, as I'm not going to be on Instagram for more than 30 minutes. And then those weekly and maybe even,
Yeah,
monthly
that
boundaries.
screen time thing that Apple puts,
It'll just,
dude, it's a gut punch because you're like,
it
oh shit, I
is.
spent like 7 hours this week on this phone,
Yep.
just on doing what, you know?
Well,
I mean,
imagine, like, think about how easy 5 or 10 minutes just goes
right,
gone,
right,
down the drain.
right. That's
But
interesting.
then it's like, yeah.
We could talk about that at least first for a minute or two about just the time itself, because one of the most profound realizations that I've had is when somebody says, "Hey, you're wasting your time," or "This is a good use of time." I like to go very deep on a lot of these things. So I go, what is a waste of time and what is a good use of time when you don't actually control time itself?
Yeah.
Time ticks regardless if you're doing shit or not. You know what I mean? It's like you could do nothing and time's still going to keep moving. So what you consider a good or bad use of time is completely irrelevant in that perspective because you don't control time itself. But what you can control is be more conscious about, what you choose to do with your time. But again, if you're connected and you're part of this world, plenty of people are going to come to take your time away from you. If you don't know how to use your time, other people will find a way to use that time for you. So that's really sort of where the boundaries have to be set up so you can stay sane and not feel like you're being pulled around by everybody else around you, and you still really have, some sort of control over your life. And I think being connected to the hip with a phone, or, even I wear an Apple Watch, and so it's like, getting buzzed on your wrist now, you're going like, and then the next thing, Apple's coming out with glasses. So it's like, you're not going to get away from this. It's only going to get more integrated onto us, right? I heard your song about Elon Musk, so I know you're familiar with Mr. Elon. Yep. He's talking about the, human brain interfaces that he's building with the Neuralink.
Yep.
We're going to be wired, man. Like, this is training grounds right now, If we can't master this, like, we're screwed for what's coming.
Great. It just, you said it so well. And when you talk about time like that, you got to talk energy too, right? Because you only have so much energy throughout the day. That's true. And it's not physical energy. Like, yeah, you can only probably feasibly work out for maybe, if you wanted to, for 3 or 4 hours. That would be pretty tough to do. But your actual mental energy too, and what you're expending this time on, like, you can have something that takes a lot of time but not as much energy, or something that takes a small amount of time and so much energy, right?
Totally.
Like when it comes into the process of, like, or the concept of deep work too, right? And not having those distractions. But yeah, I think once you and me even having like a very small business, like not, nothing crazy, but even realizing that energy of like, man, this is one client, I spent this, if I tracked it, I spent this many hours just engaging with my video guy, and then, talking to them and trying to set it up. It's like, all that energy is also gone to. And then once, which you've probably experienced too, we all have getting to the end of the day, and then and then you want to like spend time with your significant other, and then you're just like, you're just dead. You're just like, all my energy was sucked away, and it's not your fault. Like, I don't even know if it's my fault, but yeah, it's energy and time. They coincide.
I've started to recalibrate my thought process on my return on time investment for the last 3 years of my life. Once I started to work more with clients and stuff like that, I started to realize, okay, I needed to really calculate how much of my time goes in and how much do I actually get out of it. Because that to me then sets everything into more of a broader perspective, that each activity that I do, I have to understand, okay, doing this activity is not going to yield any fruit for me for a while, but I'm still choosing to continue. And then that helps me negotiate with myself a little bit better. Then I'm not like, okay, this is a waste of time. Going back to the waste of time, because your brain's always going to tell you like you're wasting time, or you could be doing this. But
you also, you don't know the lesson though until after, right?
Right.
So
you can't until
or
you look
who
back.
knows, until years later, right? So
right.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you could say waste of time, but is it a waste of a lesson too?
That's powerful. I love that.
You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know until you did it. That's really what it comes down to from the beginning of this conversation. You wouldn't know until you hit record.
It's like, yeah, no, it's like, it was saying it's a waste of time is like saying, I know everything that's going to come out of what's going to happen in the next X amount of minutes. You just don't. So.
Yeah, you don't know the future, and that's it. Yeah. That's about it. The only way you'll know is if you try, and then you'll get somewhere and you'll know what happens, right?
And I think when you're young too, and when you're just getting out of college, or, something like what I'm doing, at my age, or, my friends, or, kids even getting out of high school and things like that, you're not taught any of this time management. No. I mean, you're taught more of like a 9-to-5 mindset, which is probably the worst for time management. You're just taught everything. This thing comes first, and then at the end of the day, deal with all your other shit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's
And
so
then just
true.
your other shit's just for the end of the day. But your most of your time is just for this thing, so but yeah, there's no real there's not a lot of education on that either. So and then you have these conversations, try to figure it out.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what our humanity is at this point in life, is that because of our connectivity, we're not really starting to figure out, like, of course, the low-hanging fruit got the attention first of the people, like all the bad information, the negativity, the stuff that we kind of, are unconsciously fueled by, if that's promoted to the top. But I genuinely believe, similar to when I was in the fitness industry, when I was starting out as a bodybuilder, like bodybuilding was a niche, man. You don't talk about it. You didn't tell people you were a bodybuilder because you were embarrassed, because nobody understood what that meant. They
Wow.
thought you were kind of like this weird dude that just like goes in the gym all day. But at the same time, it's like, I just saw that blow up from 2010 to 13 when Instagram started to pop off about fitness and all that other stuff. God, like, it's just changed the whole dynamic about that fitness industry and the supplement industry and how that came in. I genuinely believe that is going to happen, and it is happening, and I'm part of it. You're a part of it. This is going to happen for our internet culture, for mental health, is like, because so many people are going to get hurt from mentally from being online and not having that ability to manage themselves. There's going to be a massive industry that's all focused around, hey, let me help you find your, center, help you find your peace. So it's kind of like everything that I'm gearing towards that I did with my physical health life that I've learned. I've been, for the last 5 years, it's all been about mental health. It's all been about kind of healing that inside and being centered. And now it's like everything for me is about that balance now. It's like, if you don't have those two things, you're not going to be in this for the long term. Like, I want to be doing this when I'm 50. I'm only 28. So it's like, I want to be doing this for another 30, 40 years before,
Yep.
maybe until I die. I don't know. But for that, I have to have a balanced life. It's the same thing. It's if you're just going to go hard as hell in the gym in one day of the week, you can't train for the rest of the week.
No.
You gotta make yourself train every single day. And that's how you build the physique. So I do feel like we're at that place right now with our technology, especially with the whole
It's
COVID
true.
situation. It's made everybody realize that, yeah, you can stay at home, you can still be productive somewhat, you can get work done, but you need to instill some good
Man, that gave
habits.
us years of experience of dealing online
Yeah,
in just a small amount of
short amount of
time. Yeah,
time. Yeah,
great.
dude. I'd be curious if I could ask you a little bit more deeper question around, like, all the work that you're doing right now, and of course, what you've done in your past. Like, what is your philosophy of life? At this point, like, why do you believe you're
Mhm.
here in this moment in time, and what is it that you're trying to do with it?
Yeah, I probably, the answer probably always changes, and it kind of changes as you go, I think. But everything for me was just kind of one step at a time. It's like even the things that don't seem significant or become very significant, and even I'll take it back to the music of the first track that I dropped and that I did with my buddy Pernell and my other friend Justin, and our whole school listened to that, our whole high school, and I had like teachers coming up to me
That must
talking to
have
me
felt
about it and
good.
stuff. It felt good, yeah, and it was a small like school, but it did, and that was like a this is real moment basically where you go, oh, okay, like that can happen, So I kind of had these little moments throughout my life and switching careers, and I was a mechanic for 3 years. I did that. I thought I was going to do that. I do nothing really similar to that now, obviously as a hobby, but now I make podcasts. So, but I guess the why of it is just to allow people to have the confidence that they can just do it themselves, because I could have just said I'm a mechanic and I would have just stopped there, so
Mm.
I didn't stop there. But I realized I saw this internet thing, and over a year ago I saw the freelancing. I saw when it wasn't cool to work at home, and I saw all this. So I was like, there's something here. There's something else. And I know that, at least like mentally I can do something else. I can do, and even if I am working at home and just staring at the computer, at least that's better. I'm at least working for myself. But yeah, when it comes to the why and like my podcast and the music's a little more like personal, I guess. But as far as the content I put out and the podcast and why I do everything, it's really just to keep going and to show people like it's not, you don't have to. I come from a very small town. There's a lot of farmers that you turn around, you throw a hay bale, and that's kind of how it goes, and a lot of my generation isn't doing that. A lot of kids went to college and they're working in Philly or New York or whatever, but it's very small town mentality. So I didn't want to carry that. I didn't want to get stuck in that.
Mm.
A lot of, a small town can predict your fate, and you don't really want that. So, or at least most people, don't, or at least I didn't. So,
Oh, I love that. And
I continue to do it to try to show, other people that they can, and for myself too. I just love doing it. So
yeah, that's fantastic, man. And Along the same lines, like, well, let's say, we're at the end of our life here, both you and I, how would you want to be remembered when it's all said and done?
Just through everything that I created, I think, and just how I made people feel. And that's
There you
it,
go.
because that's really it. That's really it, man. And that's that's the cliche thing. A lot of cliches are truths, and that's one of them is I don't remember every word somebody said to me, but you definitely know if they made you feel good or
You
they made you
remember.
feel bad or if they seemed authentic and real or if they seemed fake and angry, So
Yeah.
you kind of that's probably another reason I keep putting everything out is to kind of legacy. And I don't even understand legacy. I'm 21. I don't understand legacy. Like, I don't think you really kind of understand it until I don't even know if you ever really understand it for yourself,
Right.
but that's something I do probably think about more. And that comes back to the kind of 5 and 10 year goals rather than the 6 month goals,
That's incredible, man. I'd love to go back a little bit to our conversation about rap. And I know I've been hit by this because I love the rap culture and music a lot. I told you I listen to Jay-Z and Kanye quite a bit, Kendrick Lamar. I love people that are really, really like lyrical and quite deep and profound with their words. And every now and again, you listen to a song, maybe you've heard it a million times, but you didn't hear that one line, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe you're in a point in your life or maybe you're struggling or whatever, and then that line hits you, and all of a sudden you're just like, whew, like I've
Yep.
busted into tears on a lot of songs where I've just,
Me too.
because I used to listen to this music when I would work out, and I was already full of so much anger and rage and like sort of like that sadness and like everything that comes up with like kind of pushing yourself to the next level. You take all the fuel that you've gotten in your
Take
life.
all you can get. And,
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm curious if there's anything that comes to mind in terms of like maybe a rap song or a line or a lyric or something that, really took you to a place. And even if you remember it, even better. But, I'm curious like if that has some, significance. I prepared for this question, obviously. So I wrote down like a line for me. There's a song by Kanye and Jay-Z on Watch the Throne called Murder to Excellence, I think it's called. And there's a song in there, and it just busted me into tears very recently, like last week, actually, when I was listening to some of your music and I was listening to some other music.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, I absolutely loved some of the things that you've put out, especially like I think the song's called Heartless, is it called?
Heart problems. Yeah.
Heart Problems.
Yeah.
That's a great song that you've put out. And then
Thank you.
one of the lines that you have in one of your songs is like, if you haven't failed, you're faking it. Basically, is the
Yeah,
gist
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
It's like it's so deep because everyone that talks about success always talks about, yeah, look at me, look at my cars, look at my house, and it's like, yeah, but tell me about the day when it sucked, when everybody told you weren't shit, and you had to still climb through that. That's what I'm more interested in. So a line that really got me in that song, Kanye says it's towards the end of his verse. In the last verse, he says, every problem that you had before today is now done. And that just hit me, and I was just like, it was a moment of complete silence within me, because it was like whatever chattering is going on about the past, whatever's happened, it just silences itself completely right there. It's like, you have no problems that are in the past. They're done. You're only here in this moment in time right now. And moving forward from here, you do what you do, and then you face those things as they come. That to me, like, was one of the most profound things. At a different point in my life, I when I was very like going through like depression and stuff, that came back to me as well. But in a different way, it was saying like, you've survived every bad day you've had so far, all of them. You're resilient as fuck. Like, you have gone through every bad day in your life. So today, if it's a bad day, it's okay. You've got a lot more under your belt, behind you. So it just like empowers me to be like, whatever, I'm ready to deal with whatever it is. Long-winded question. I'm curious if you
No,
have
but
anything.
they can hit you though. Those lines can hit you.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd have to pull it up to because there's a couple songs that I have in mind, but I definitely forget the lines off the top. But I will
Paraphrase.
No, I got you. I'll speak on one line that I don't want to give myself this. I'm not trying to hype myself up here, but I know my lyrics as
And that's actually perfect.
better than
I'd rather have you talk about those.
But yeah, thank you. And just because they're always in my head all day.
Absolutely.
But I have this song called Second Story, and it's probably, the most real song I've ever wrote. It's probably the most, I just put that song down. I didn't touch the lyrics, and I just recorded it, and that was it. And that's all energy that came out. But I have people, it's the first line. It's people tell you what they could be instead of what they are. And I think that we're just taught to do that, though. People always say, what are you going to be?
Right.
They don't say who are you
now?
So exactly. And you can't know who you're going to be if you don't know who you are right now.
Oh, Dude, I'm getting goosebumps, dude. Like no joke, right now I'm getting my hairs are standing up. I don't know if you can see this on the camera.
No, dude, yeah, dude. Oh,
Dude,
that's
that's
crazy.
deep.
I'm grateful for that, man.
That's
That's
deep.
crazy that yeah, and it's just something that I had to learn for myself too. And in this whole conversation has really been talking about that and kind of going back to my influences and trying to figure out, all right, why do I do this? It's like, all right, like what do I value then, you know, and like who am I in this moment? And another one that kind of ties into that is sometimes you got to blend in before you're standing out, you know. So
Ooh, I like
I
that.
just those two are kind of my 1 and 2 lines right there. And you know, don't be afraid to kind of, you know, blend in just to see what everybody else is doing, you know, until you start to break out.
Right.
Because when you break out, you're not even going to realize you're doing it because you're just on your own,
You got to be
you
a
know,
follower
path.
before you can
But
be a leader, right? That's like one of those
that's it.
iconic quotes that it
True. And a
really
good
hits you.
follower too. You better learn how to be a follower too.
Right, right. Yeah, because
Because
if
that's the thing is like, yeah, there's no leaders without very very without lack of a better word, good followers, you know.
right, right.
You learning how to do that, that's a whole process in itself, and learning how to learn, that's what you're doing as a follower most of the time.
Dude, that's so profound, man. I really like that. I almost like feel like I want to just sit here with those words for a little while because you know, words have a lot of power. I've talked about this previously, and I'll share it with you. It's like, and you know this from meditation, is like words are just our way of explaining ourselves to somebody else. You don't use words to talk to yourself all the time in a positive way because a lot of internal chatter is negative. It's always critical. It's always a voice that maybe isn't even your voice, right? It's something that maybe you heard somewhere and it just
Most of the
lingers in
time
you,
probably not.
right?
Yeah,
And then so it's like if you don't take that moment to kind of strip away and take out everything that's not you, you don't really get to see like what am I about? What is really here that's original to me, you know, and really just kind of like
and
comes
that's
out of
what we're trying to probably do like for our
yeah.
most of our lives too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like that, you know, where the self-awareness comes in. Like that's just you're always at the beginning. I feel, you know, it's like it's not even like a hill that you climb and you get to the top and it's like I know myself. Like nah.
No, yeah. I
It's a
mean,
daily
it's a daily reminder because
struggle.
every day is like it's a reset, right? We every time we go to sleep and we wake up, we have to do it all over again. It doesn't matter how great yesterday was, right? My dad always
Yep,
says it doesn't matter what you did in the past; it only matters what you can do today. You
that's
know,
it.
and that's true for business, right? 100%. Like, great, you had the best clients, you know, last year or
Hmm.
yesterday, and your clients were happy. Are your clients happy right now? That's what matters for you as a business. And I was just like, yeah, Dad, that's totally true. But a long time I didn't want to accept that because I always felt like, no, I have a reputation. I've done this and that. All that's cool. But when it comes down
Hmm.
to it, people will remember you for what you can do right now. You know,
And
like,
yeah, and true. Like sometimes, you know, sometimes a testimonial is a make or break, and sometimes people are like, I don't care what you did.
yeah,
They're like, I don't care what you worked on. I don't care what your last project was. Like, it's so yeah, it kind of depends. But you're so right with the words, man. Like, and this is another quote though, from Sturgill Simpson. I don't know if you ever listened to him before. He's a
I think so.
country and kind of rock slash country. He said, "A picture's worth 1,000 words, but a word ain't worth a dime." And right, but he's an artist and a singer, right? So obviously
Yeah.
his words, like he was kind of making fun of the whole thing. And that was like that lyric was like kind of from his come up too. And that's true too, is like everybody can talk. I mean, it's free to talk, right? But if you could have if you work on your words and you say something that's really meaningful, that's going to be the difference.
Right.
You know?
Because
And that's
words
where
are
it
just
comes
like,
back to
yeah, they're
power.
like poetry in the sense, like if the carefully crafted words can really kind of take you there, quote unquote, like take you to that place of that same place that we all, you know, all human beings when we pray or when we sit still and we ask the universe for whatever, like that quiet place that we can't even explain really in words. Sometimes the right set of words carefully put together can really take you to a moment where you're just like you're awestruck. You're really kind of stuck. You're like, wow, I really don't know how to comprehend that. But at a deeper level, you understand it. It's like a lot of times, you know, when we listen to people that are public speakers or people that are trying to, you know, project a good message, you know, I would say that not all of those words that they say necessarily have to gel with you, but to a deeper part of you, you'll understand what someone's saying. You know, maybe we'll go back to the energy conversation, right? Like when somebody's projecting that positive, that good energy, that strong energy, you can feel that without being able to explain that into words. You can feel that through an audio, like a song or whatever, or, you know, video through the expression, or in person, you know, seeing a person move about in an
You
audience and
can.
whatnot.
Sometimes it's not about the words and that's
Yeah.
when that comes in of like, you could have one artist say a lyric and it doesn't mean anything to you, and you could have say somebody else sing it or something, and it's just the most, it gives you those goosebumps, right? So
Totally, totally.
yeah, no, you can feel that's the energy. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, something that I also just thought about too when you said like your problems. What was it? Your problems for yesterday aren't
Yeah.
gonna.
So the quote I said was, "Every problem you had before this moment is now done."
There's a Freddie Gibbs quote, and he said he's like, the future started yesterday. Every minute I'm feeling different, and I'm not the same. So it's like that's what it is. Like
It's
my future
tracking
started
time,
yesterday.
right?
My future started yesterday, man. I gotta get ahead. I gotta go. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I realize this like because I live in San Diego. I live in Pacific Beach, so I'm very close to the ocean. So I love to kind of sit there and read or like watch the waves and like look out into the distance and you really start to see when you look out at the waves like that, you can look and see, wow, I'm really not much different than the life that's around me. It's just that I have this ability to walk and talk a little bit, but I'm not much different than these trees that are part of this life and then the waves that are in this ocean. We're all connected to this entire universe, and where I'm really trying to take this with you is I know that a lot of rappers, they're trying to look at culture, but they're in the culture because you have to be in it to know what it is. And then they are looking at everything from a much bigger perspective where you're almost like, it's like a top down view and you're pointing out something that we all know to be true, but maybe we don't know how to articulate it ourselves. You know what I mean? Like like a lot of the lines, like we were talking about Jay-Z, like what is he talking about? God comes into the booth. Like it doesn't make any sense, but it does to a much deeper level. You're like,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know what it is in me that creates this. Like when I sit on a drum kit and I'm laying down a beat, I know what I'm doing to a degree, but a lot of times I'm taken over by something else that comes through, and then all of a
That's
sudden I
the
don't know how
flow.
I put these patterns together. I don't know how I just did that. I couldn't. If you asked me to like lay it out for you mathematically or something, I don't think I could do it. But at the same
Yes.
time, it's like wow, it just flew through me, like. So it's like I'm curious, like how does that relate to your process of creativity? Like when you're looking at at your age, you're seeing a lot of different things that are coming up because you're just getting into that point where you could have started a corporate gig and a corporate life for a
Mhm.
while, but you decided to go a different route. So you're kind of like seeing, why you stepped away from that. You're seeing like what's the alternative? What are sort of the things? So I'm curious, like how do you navigate that, or what do you do to like keep yourself in the culture, but also like see it outside?
Yeah. It's hard. I feel like it's tough to kind of have the all angles
Yeah.
of what's going on, because the thing for me is in a in a lot of different cultures. So I'm in a rap hip hop culture, but then I also have a drummer that I work with, and we do spoken word and hard rock and drop. I put drop D on the guitar, and we do some like Tool type stuff, and then I'm right here and I'm making rap and hip hop. My producer sends me a hip hop beat, and then I'm in this podcast culture, and I'm getting connected with these people, kind of through that, and people who are starting later in life, or some people even starting earlier in life. And then I'm on LinkedIn, and then I'm on Instagram, and then Instagram's a mix of hip hop, and then a lot of other artists, creatives. And so it's trying to kind of keep my ear to the ground in all of the cultures, I think, is probably the how I find my balance, without getting kind of too caught up
Mm.
in like the little things that are happening in the drama, but just at least understanding, like, all right, what are my people like going through? What do my rappers need right now? Are they more on like the beats side, or like what's new? Is like, all right, we still on this trap thing? Like, all right, but let's what's J. Cole putting out and Kendrick putting out, and what's the new sound that's coming up or something. I try to just, as
Stay
much as I
plugged into
can,
the game,
stay
really.
plugged into the game, have my ear to the ground, but then at the same time be in my in my own lane enough that I can just still kind of be unbiased with what I'm making,
Right, right.
when it comes. But obviously you're a culmination of everything, so it's just all my influences come from it. Like I get
Yeah.
rap influences from Tool songs, and I could show you a beat where I like, that's the influence, you could tell, so it's like, but I think for me it's just kind of keeping the ear to the ground.
No, I love that because I personally say this, it's like I work really hard to make it look like I'm not working that hard. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I make it really easy for everybody to think that I have like a very, very straightforward, simple life. And I do to a lot of degrees. Like I've made my life simplistic in the sense that what I do, I choose to do those as like my building blocks. So I want to do them every day. It's kind of like that repetitive mentality, from bodybuilding, kind of reinforced. It's like, you do the same things day in and day out. Effective days of effort get you where you're trying to go. So it's like, what do you do every day? So like, for me, it's like I'm watching everyone. I'm watching what you're doing, how you're doing it. I'm like reading between the lines, so to speak, right? When I hear or see somebody doing something, I go, I see what they're doing, but I'm looking at it from the consumer's perspective, but also from the person, the way they've put it out, and see what I can learn from them in that sense. But then, yeah, going back to, it's like, yeah, I know what other people are up to, but I have to spend a lot of time also making sure I know what I'm up to. What's my inner climate like? What's going on within this body, this mind, this person right here? So that way I can make sure that it's staying authentic and staying in sort of in that bound of like where I want to be, rather than kind of like, if we're walking by and people can just throw things at you and whatever sticks just sticks. I mean, that
And
is
that's like, yeah, true.
sadly
And just saying yes to a lot of things too.
yeah,
Saying yes to a lot of opportunities, and especially like when you're younger too, you just want to say yes to everything because you think you're never going to get it again.
true,
And then
so
you're,
true.
damn, and you throw that energy towards that, and you're like, it comes back as like, they were just trying to use me for something, like, and I
Yeah,
didn't even
dude.
realize that. I took it as an opportunity, like, that's fine though, I'll learn, but still, it's like, true, that all just came back to the balance,
Right. I think our conversation's coming to a full circle, man. I think we're
for
getting to a
real.
good place here. I'm curious if before we wrap up, if there's anything that you'd like to get into, any questions or that you might have for me, or any topics that you'd like to get into before we wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely wanted to touch on the lifting and the bodybuilding and stuff like that, man, just because it was part of my life, still is part of my life, but
Yeah.
was part of my life, every day, and that's what I thought about. It's what I thought I was going to do too, kind of in the midst of everything. Kind of before I even had like a steady, mechanic job and stuff like that. I was just very into it. But how did, what influences does it still have with you? And were you ever, were you going to compete, or did
Oh,
you?
I
And
did. Yeah. Yeah. So
okay.
I'll give you a quick backstory. Yeah. So, I grew up, obviously I'm not white. So I grew up in this country as an immigrant. When I did, I got bullied like my whole life through school. Right. And I was a short kid. I think when I was a freshman in high school, I was maybe 4'11", and I was like 100 and maybe 8 pounds or something like that, right? So when I just started in school and kind of like, I'm super thankful that my family has given me a tremendous amount of love. Like my mom is like my world. I mean, I love my whole family, but my mom and I are like inseparable in that way. Like the amount of love that I got from her couldn't be overpowered or overshadowed by all the hate that I got or like the, discrimination that I faced. So but the problem is, right, like the not the problem, but maybe what really happens unconsciously is like that built up so much like unresolved frustration within me that a lot of that started to manifest itself when I was working out, because it's a fuel. The rage is fuel for like, working out. It was the best translation of that energy. So I just realized that, okay, I saw some upperclassmen when I was a freshman that were, getting working out and this and that. I had my friend Scott Frost, actually, he was on this podcast. He was the guy who, when I was 14 years old, he was the best drummer in school. He was also in really good shape, and like this kid was really popular. So I was like I want to be somebody like that. I always admired people that I saw were like kind of doing what they wanted to do, and they were doing it really well. So that really influenced me at an early age, So like I wanted to be the best drummer. Like I became the drum captain when I was a junior in high school. I led the whole drum line for 2 years, and our drum line was the best drum line that school's ever had. And it's like just kind of having that mindset of like I always wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be the perfectionist. I want to be the best. So when I got into like working out, in the beginning it was just to like get bigger so bullies would leave me the hell alone. And then what started to happen is like when I started to get attention from it, like I was already on stages for like music and all that, but when you start to like walk around and all of a sudden it's like, damn, you've been working out, like what's going on over there? Then that starts to reinforce itself. You're like, oh my God, like people notice this. This is kind of cool, because I couldn't get taller, but I could get wider, I could get bigger, So that's where it started. That's how it all kind of began. And then what happened was, I once I got into college, I didn't get into college. I started in community college, because my dad actually had his health went really bad. He actually went blind, and so we had to figure out how to like navigate our lives, because I had to figure out how to make money to support my family. And so I knew that I had to stay close to home. So the gym sort of, I asked my parents for one thing. I said, if anything, I would love to have a gym membership so I can go and work out, because didn't have one. So once I got that, man, that became like sort of my therapy. Every night I'd be in the gym at 8 p.m. and I'd be back at home at like 11 or 12. Every single night I'd be in there for 2 hours, 3 hours. And then after that, I would talk to the people that were sort of like the old timers, and just started to build that rapport where like it became an escape for me. And at that age, at 18, 19, 20, 21, at that age where you're like super prone to like going out and doing, drugs and partying and doing silly things at that age, I was really thankful that I had a different outlet because I was very frustrated about my life at that stage. I felt that I didn't have any control over my parents' health. I didn't have any control over my parents' finances, of course. But what I realized through that process was I have a lot of control over what I can do to me. I can control what I put into my mouth, how I treat my body. And that really became my mission. Is like I wanted to never have my family struggle because of my health. I never wanted to have anybody in my life, or me not being able to perform because I didn't take care of myself. So that became sort of my driving force. And then I met former Mr. Universe back in the day, and he was at my gym, and he kind of talked it up to me. He saw me, and he's like, I see this kid, he's got a lot of potential. So he kind of talked it up to me. He's like, yeah, you should do a show. And I was like, I'll think about it, whatever. But then like I'd see the guy almost every single day, every night. So we just build a rapport. And before you know it, I'm signing up for my first show at 18 and 19 years old. I had only been training for about a year. And, I competed as a natural competitor at that time. And I came out as a teen and I took second place. And I was so pissed. Because I knew I could win. I knew I could win. That was it, man. Once that bug came up and I was like, I know I have what it takes to win. I just I'm not going to stop now. So like from there, I took the next 2 years to just put on so much size, as much as I could, and then I competed again in 2014. That's when I went for the West Coast Classic and actually won that. I am Mr. West Coast, man, to that degree. I won one of the most prestigious titles that I could go for, and I was on my way. Like I had sponsorships. I sold out the first 2 rows of the show. They were all people that came to see me. Like the promoters knew me, the brands knew me. People wanted me to like be a part of that whole thing, And I just realized at that point when I was competing that I had to step away from it because the competitiveness took away the healthy part. Because when I became really competitive about it, I didn't care about anything else except for winning. And I'm no longer caring about my health as much as I could. Because when you're competitive, you're not trying to be healthy, you're trying to win. It's a very different mindset, So if you would have met me at 21 years old, you're 21 now, I was the kid that I could make a grown man shake in his boots because I had so much fire, energy, and potential that if I were to talk to somebody, they'd be like, dude, this kid's on his way. I used to tell people I'm going to have my own private plane when I'm 30 and I'm going to fly over all you motherfuckers. I'm going to fuck, like that kind of attitude is terrible to kind of say, but I'm admitting it. That's what it was because I realized that I had discipline. If I wanted to set my mind to something, there's nobody in this earth that's going to stop that. No one. And especially having your parents support, like my mom was supportive of it. She fought for me. She fought my dad for it because my dad wasn't fully into it. He wanted to be traditional, go to school, get a degree, work. Fair enough. He wants me to help with the family and I want to take that responsibility, but I also wanted to have that freedom for myself. I wanted to have that ability to be like, if I set my mind to something, there's no way in hell anyone's going to outwork me on this. Like I'm going to do this to the best. Fast forward a few years, after I did competing and I decided to walk away from it because I was not healthy, that started to translate into other parts of my life. I was like, started to realize like I'm very disciplined and dedicated, but I wasn't fully happy at the end of the road once I won. Tell you the truth, dude, the day I won, I was the most disappointed person I could be, which is the craziest thing ever because you're like, what? Like, that's so ass backwards.
I trained all this time for this. This is my
I'm not
entire
even
life.
happy about it. You know what I mean? So it was like I had to really take this some time to like reflect on what it is that I'm really interested in. Am I trying to do this for other people or is this for me? And that really kind of set me on the journey inward because I had already accomplished success based on other people's metrics in that sense. I knew that I could go ahead and get $1 million contract if I wanted in the next year. I knew it like no joke. Like I'm not even shitting about this. Like I know that I had that ability, to sign with 2 or 3 big companies, becoming a brand ambassador, be the next name, in that industry. But it just didn't feel right.
And winning is temporary. So that was a temporary.
Yeah. And you realize that like people only give a shit when you win. Nobody cares when you lose. Nobody was there when I lost 6 times. Only people showed up when I lost, when I won the 7th time, baby. Yep. So like that kind of really made me realize it's like, yeah, this is a game that we're playing here. I need to be more strategic about this game, like, so when I was like 21 years old, 22 years old, man, I'd already like won in terms of like what most people can accomplish in their lifetime in that sense, like I've already done 2 or 3 things in my life that I was excellent at. So now it was more about like, where do you want to take this long term, and I realized that I wanted to be something bigger than what I was in that sense, not just bigger muscularly, but like bigger in my impact and my influence. So like the journey inward started then, going into my own thoughts and going into my own emotions and
You
realizing.
didn't want to just be a peddler for supplements
Yeah.
for 3 different companies on a
No,
retainer,
no.
right? And then just yeah.
Yeah, because you know what?
No
that's,
disrespect, that's
yeah,
a great way to live, but
yeah,
you just did a little self-reflection. Like I see where this goes.
yeah. Yeah, I saw where these roads were going to lead me, and I didn't want to be on them. And I'm kind of like that. Like I similar to you. Like I've always carved my own way in everything I've done. I'm always the person that stood out in the crowd. Like I remember when I studied computer science of all things, believe it or not. When I was a bodybuilder walking into a lecture room with 400 kids, and I'm this jacked dude with my protein and my water, and people are like, "What the fuck is this kid doing in this class?" I'm like, I'm here just like all you people. I'm here to learn, and I'm not gonna just get this degree. I'm gonna do 10 things more. So I had that sort of mindset. Like I felt I was a cut above everybody else in that sense, because I was like, you people can do one thing, I can do 5, and I'm going to show you how I'm better than all of you. I had that really bad ego, but at the same time, that's what fueled it. That's what fueled that
It's
lifestyle.
good fuel, but it's not. Yeah, it's not
doesn't
always
sustain you.
positive. It
Yeah.
doesn't sustain. It's not always positive. It is good fuel, but
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to be that. Yeah, or have that.
So it's almost
time.
like the last few years I've like caged the beast, if that makes any sense. It's like I only unlock that and creak that door open when I know like it's still in me, that person's still there, that rage and aggression and that dedication is all still there. But now it's more of a calculated move rather than it's a controlled explosion rather than just a fucking bomb just popping off.
Just going off.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I feel you so much on that energy, man. And that like, that's I feel like I feel weird when I'm not doing shit, like it feels like it's not me. Like that energy, like, and just trying to I completely understand what you're saying. And it's so raw. Like I remember when I first started working out, same shit. We would go into it was my friend Justin again. We were rapping and lifting. That's kind of how it all worked.
That's awesome, man.
And smoking too. Obviously, we were chilling. We were having a good time. That's what we do.
Awesome,
that was the pre-workout, post-workout, right? But we were trying to tame that energy though, right? And we would go. We would think we were going to do an hour, right? And then it's a 500 day. We're just like, yo, let's make it a 500 day. And we're going to do 500 reps of back. And then it was just like 2.5 hours later, right?
Hell yeah.
But then I like, it's just, it wouldn't stop. I felt like I could just go all the time. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't like I was definitely drank a cup of coffee, but I just had an internal energy.
Right.
And it's so funny just how you explain it. I just relate.
Yeah, dude.
So much. And I never like competed or anything like that, but as far as kind of the energy goes and kind of taming that,
the biggest lesson that I learned from that whole experience was you need to find out how you're going to do this for the long term. And it wasn't going to be the way I was going. I knew that I was going to eventually hit burnout, and I knew that I was going to eventually have to pivot. And a lot of smart people in my life did try to tell me that. But you know what? I didn't want to listen because I want to do things my way. And to a large degree, I'm still like that in many things. It's like, you want to tell me? Well, first show me what you've done, and then I'll listen to you maybe, kind of like that attitude. But now it's more grounded in my truth and my being and like in my spirit, and just, realizing that life is about peace and love. It's not about aggression and rage. It's not about, going out and trying to be better than everybody else. It's about, if I climb to the top of the mountain, I want to bring a ladder with me so I can help other people climb up. What the hell am I going to do up there by myself? What am I going to do by my own self?
And you're just competing with yourself too.
Yeah.
You found too. Because then you're looking on the stage, you're like, I won, but it's really me. Like,
yeah, totally, man. It was a huge win for the mindset part of life. True. I can say that I have a championship mindset because I've accomplished championship goals with my mindset. But now it's more about like sort of the longevity. Everything that I do now in my life is all about sustainability and longevity. When I'm building businesses and I'm helping businesses, it's all about, what do you want to do? Like, longer term, do you want to keep this client? Is it a one and done thing? Or are you trying to keep clients for 20 years? You know what I'm saying? Like, I want people to come and buy from me for years and years and years. I don't want the one and done type of client. If that's what happens,
you got to ask those questions too. And you got to ask yourself those questions. And that's like, once you start asking and answering those questions for yourself, that's when you kind of lock it in. Then you get that perspective of like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have one and done that guy. Maybe I should have just not done. Maybe I should have not hard sold him. And I should have just let him be a connection. And then he was going to come back in a year. Never know.
Totally, dude.
Wow.
Dude, Sully, this has been an insane conversation, man. I feel so charged right now. Like, I feel like I want to go and have a second workout. I feel like I'm amped
I haven't worked out today yet, so maybe I will now. I'm feeling you on that. I'm getting like juiced up, man.
This is great. I really appreciated this. This was really fun for me, and I want to keep up with you as you continue in your journey, and I'd love to have you as a guest again in the future. to just to catch up and see how your journey is going and maybe share some more wisdom. Again, I
Likewise,
really
man.
appreciate this, brother. Thank you so much. And
Anytime. No, thank you so much for having me in this platform, and this podcast is amazing. I love what you're doing. And after watching it for like 5 minutes, I was already sold, and I was just like, obviously I went and watched the rest of the episode, but I was like, this guy just the way that you speak, and I could just tell you're not just doing it just to do it, man, that you really love doing this, and you're very
I
good at it.
appreciate
So
that, brother. Thank you.
so it's been a blast and a great opportunity. I'm going to have you on mine as well. So
Thank you, everybody, for checking this out. And we hope to see you next time. Check out SullyBop on SoundCloud, on iTunes. I think you're on iTunes.
yeah,
I think
Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Apple Music. You got
Just
all
Google
places.
SullyBop. You're going to find this man. He's got some
got
great
it.
music out there. I'm a fan. And I'm so thankful to have you in my network, dude. Like, this is awesome. I can't wait to see what we're doing 10, 15, 20 years from now. I see a lot of potential in you, man. I see a young me in you. So I see this is like just the beginning, You're on your way. You're doing the right things.
Kind words, man. Thank you, Abhinav. I appreciate it, man.
Take care, everybody. Hey guys, thank you again for checking out this episode. Remember, there's a video component that you can also watch, and you can keep up with me on YouTube at Blossom Media Studio or on Instagram at The Real Abhinav. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.